Hey, wonderful people, welcome to Family Tales. Today's story is about parents who tried to sell their own daughter to her sister's cheating ex, all to keep a shady business deal alive. When she refused, they threatened to fire her, disown her, and erase her from the family. So she did the unthinkable. She stopped protecting their secrets, reported their tax fraud to the IRS, and watched the millions they wanted her to marry disappear into audits, penalties, and legal fees. They wanted a wedding. Instead, they got investigated. Let's get into it. I, 26, have been the good daughter my entire life. Straight A's, business degree, worked at my parents' construction supply company since I was 16. My older sister, the wild child, dropped out of college, partied through her 20s, got engaged to the son of my parents' biggest supplier 3 years ago. That engagement was less about love and more about business. My parents' company supplies building materials to contractors across 3 states. My sister's ex-fiance's family owns the manufacturing plant that provides about 40% of our inventory at a steep discount. The engagement was basically a merger dressed up in a white dress. Then, 8 months ago, my sister called off the wedding. Found out her fiancé had been sleeping with her college roommate for over a year. She was devastated, genuinely heartbroken, whatever her faults. She moved back in with my parents, started therapy, the whole thing. Here's where it gets twisted. The business deal between our families was contingent on strengthening the family bond. When my sister broke off the engagement, the other family threatened to end the supplier agreement. No more discount pricing, no more priority shipping. My parents' profit margins would tank. So what did my loving parents do? They came to me. 3 weeks ago, my mother invited me to Sunday dinner. Nothing unusual, but when I arrived, my sister's ex was sitting at the table, looking smug, looking at me. "Honey," my mother said, "we need to talk about the future of this family." My father laid it out like a PowerPoint presentation. The supplier agreement, the financial implications, the solution they'd worked out with the other family. "He's willing to give you a chance," my mother said, gesturing at my sister's ex like he was a prize pig at a county fair. "His family is willing to maintain the agreement if you two get engaged within 6 months." I looked at my sister, sitting in the corner, not meeting my eyes. "You're asking me to marry my sister's ex, the guy who cheated on her?" "People make mistakes," my father said. "What matters is the business." "The business," I repeated. "You're not seeing anyone," my mother added. "You're 26, not getting any younger. This is a good match. His family is wealthy, he's attractive. He cheated on my sister. That's between them. You'd be starting fresh." The ex finally spoke. "I've always thought you were the smarter one anyway." I looked at him, then at my parents, then at my sister, who still wouldn't look up. "No." My mother's face tightened. "Excuse me?" "No. I'm not marrying him. I'm not marrying anyone to save your profit margins. This is insane." "Don't be dramatic," my father said. "This is how business works. Families have been doing this for centuries. This isn't the 1800s. I'm not a bargaining chip." I grabbed my purse and left. My mother followed me to my car, hissing about how selfish I was being, how I was going to destroy everything they'd built. I drove away while she was still talking. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, the pressure campaign has been relentless. Daily calls, texts, my mother showing up at my apartment just to talk, my father threatening to fire me from the company, my extended family being recruited to tell me how reasonable this arrangement was. Last Tuesday, it escalated. My parents called me to a formal meeting at their house, both of them, plus their lawyer. Yes, they brought a lawyer to pressure their daughter into marriage. The lawyer explained that if I didn't comply with their request, they would terminate my employment at the company immediately, remove me from their will entirely, demand repayment of my college tuition, which they claimed was a loan, cut off all contact with the family. "You have 1 week to make your decision," my father said. "Think carefully." I sat there, looking at these people who raised me, and felt something shift inside. Not sadness, not anger, just clarity. See, here's what they forgot. I've worked at that company for 10 years. I've done everything from filing to bookkeeping to managing accounts. And 3 years ago, when my father decided he didn't trust outsiders with the finances, he had me handle the books. I know exactly how much cash they've been hiding from the IRS. I know about the consulting fees they pay to shell companies that don't do any consulting. I know about the equipment they write off as business expenses that sits in their vacation home garage. I know about the income they don't report from their rental properties. I've known for years, kept my mouth shut because family, because loyalty, because I thought that's what good daughters do. But good daughters apparently don't get a say in who they marry. "You have 1 week," my father repeated. I looked him dead in the eye. "So do you." I walked out. They probably thought I was just being dramatic. I spent that night organizing everything I had. Bank statements I'd photocopied when something seemed off. Screenshots of their QuickBooks entries that didn't match the tax filings I'd helped prepare. Receipts for business expenses that were clearly personal. Documentation of unreported rental income. Then I filed a Form 211 with the IRS whistleblower office. For those who don't know, if you report tax fraud over $2 million and the IRS recovers money based on your information, you can receive 15 to 30% of the collected proceeds. My parents have been cheating on their taxes for at least a decade. Conservative estimate of unreported income? North of $3 million. I also reported them to our state's Department of Revenue. Then I hired a lawyer to review my employment situation and confirm that their tuition loan claim was nonsense. It was. No promissory note, no repayment terms, nothing in writing, clearly a gift. And then I waited. Update 1, 2 weeks later. The week deadline passed. My parents called, furious that I hadn't come to my senses. My father officially fired me from the company, which, thanks to my lawyer, means I'm now eligible for unemployment and potentially a wrongful termination claim since they never documented any performance issues. But the real fireworks started 4 days ago. IRS showed up at the company with a notice of audit. I wasn't there, obviously, but my cousin who still works in the warehouse texted me immediately. "Dude, there are like 5 people in suits going through every filing cabinet. Your dad is losing it. What did you do?" I didn't respond. The State Revenue Department sent their own notice 2 days later. My parents are now facing audits from both federal and state tax authorities simultaneously. Here's where the entitlement reached levels I didn't think possible. My mother showed up at my apartment Sunday morning, pounding on the door at 7 a.m. "Open this door right now." I opened it. She stormed in, face red, hands shaking. "What did you do? What did you do?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you dare play dumb with me. The IRS is crawling through our business. Someone reported us. Someone who knew things. Was it you?" I just looked at her. "After everything we've done for you? We raised you. We paid for your education. We gave you a job, and this is how you repay us? You tried to sell me off to a man who cheated on my sister to save a business deal. You threatened to disown me. You called me selfish for not wanting to be a human transaction. That's business. That's how the world works. You think you're better than that? You think love matters more than money? Grow up. Get out of my apartment. You're going to fix this. You're going to tell them it was a mistake, that you made it up. That's not how the IRS works. I submitted documentation, financial records, evidence. Even if I recanted, which I won't, they'd still investigate. Her face went pale, then red again. You're not my daughter anymore. You're dead to us. Dead. I hope you're happy destroying your own family over some principle. She left, slammed the door hard enough to crack the frame. 2 days later, I found out they'd hired a criminal defense attorney. Not a tax lawyer, a criminal defense attorney. That's when I knew the situation was serious. My father tried a different approach. Called me Wednesday night, voice calm, almost gentle. "Sweetheart, I know things got heated. Your mother says things she doesn't mean, but we need to talk about this audit situation, as a family." There's nothing to talk about. There has to be a way to fix this. If you come back to the company, help us explain things to the investigators. Help you lie to federal investigators? Are you asking me to commit perjury? Silence. I'm asking you to remember who put food on your table, who gave you every opportunity in life, who made you who you are. The person you made me is someone who can't be bought. Guess you should have made me greedier. He hung up. My sister finally reached out yesterday. Text message. I know you think you're doing the right thing, but you're destroying our family. Mom hasn't slept in days. Dad's stress is through the roof. Whatever they did, they don't deserve this. I replied, they tried to sell me to your cheating ex like livestock. They threatened to ruin my life if I didn't comply. How exactly did I misread that situation? Her response, it wasn't like that. You're exaggerating. They were just trying to find a solution. A solution where I marry a man who hurt you. Where's your self-respect? She didn't respond. The IRS audit is ongoing. My parents' lawyer has advised them to not contact me anymore, which of course they're ignoring. But I'm documenting everything. Every call, every text, every visit. My lawyer says the whistleblower process takes time, sometimes years, but based on what I submitted, there's a strong case. The IRS doesn't mess around with unreported income in the millions. I've started job hunting, got an interview next week at a competitor. Turns out, 10 years of experience in construction supply management is actually valuable. Who knew? Update 2, 6 weeks later. A lot has happened. First, the IRS completed their preliminary audit, and it's bad. Really bad. The number I estimated, $3 million in unreported income over a decade, was actually conservative. Between the cash payments they never reported, the fake consulting invoices, the personal expenses disguised as business costs, and the rental income they forgot to declare, the actual figure is closer to $4.2 million. They're facing penalties, back taxes, and interest that could exceed $2 million. And that's before any criminal charges. My father hired a second lawyer, then fired him, then hired a third. They're burning through cash at an alarming rate, trying to figure out how to make this go away. Spoiler, it's not going away. The state audit found similar discrepancies. More fines, more penalties. My parents' accountant, the guy who's been helping them cook the books for years, is now cooperating with investigators in exchange for leniency. Turns out, he kept his own records. Smart guy. Here's where the entitlement reaches its peak. 3 weeks ago, my parents' lawyer sent me a cease and desist letter, accused me of defamation and tortious interference with business relationships, demanded I retract my false statements to the IRS or face legal action. My lawyer responded with a 2-page letter that basically said, everything she reported was true. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Also, you can't sue someone for reporting crimes to law enforcement. Please advise your clients to stop harassing mine. No response from their lawyer, but plenty from my family. My aunt, my mother's sister, called me last week. Started all sweet and concerned. Honey, your parents are struggling. They're talking about having to sell the business, maybe even the house. Don't you think this has gone far enough? But you reported them, your own parents. What kind of daughter does that? The kind whose parents tried to force her into an arranged marriage with her sister's cheating ex and threatened to destroy her life when she said no. Silence. That's not how they tell it. I'm sure it isn't. They say you were being ungrateful, that they offered you a wonderful opportunity and you threw it in their faces. An opportunity to be sold like property. Wonderful. You're twisting things. Goodbye, Aunt. The family has officially split into camps. About 60% side with my parents, believing their version where I'm a vindictive, ungrateful child who's destroying the family over a misunderstanding. About 30% side with me after hearing the actual story. The remaining 10% are staying neutral, which honestly is the smartest move. My sister called again 2 weeks ago. Different tone this time. Scared. Mom and Dad might have to sell Grandma's house. the one we grew up in. They're using it as collateral for their legal defense. I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry? You did this. No, they did this. For years. I just reported it. Because they asked you to marry someone? That's your justification for destroying everything? They didn't ask. They demanded. They brought a lawyer. They threatened to fire me, disown me, and sue me for tuition. Does that sound like asking? Silence. You could have just said no and walked away. I did say no. Then they tried to destroy my life, so I stopped being the only one facing consequences. You're ruining their retirement. Mom keeps crying about how they'll have nothing left. They should have thought about that before committing federal crimes for a decade. She hung up on me. Here's the thing people don't understand about families like mine. The good daughter role isn't rewarded. It's exploited. I was good because I thought being good meant being loved, being valued. But the moment I stopped being useful, the moment I refused to be a commodity, I was disposable. They never loved me. They loved what I could do for them. That realization hurt more than anything else. More than being called ungrateful. More than being disowned. More than watching the family I thought I had dissolve into nothing. But it also set me free. Final update, 4 months later. Time for the final chapter. The IRS investigation concluded last month. My parents were assessed $2.3 million in back taxes, penalties, and interest. The state added another $340,000. Their accountant's testimony was devastating. He had records going back 15 years, and he sang like a canary. Criminal charges were considered but ultimately declined. Not because my parents were innocent, but because the IRS determined civil penalties would fully recover the owed funds and criminal prosecution wasn't necessary. They got lucky. Very lucky. Here's what $2.6 million in sudden debt does to a small business. It destroys it. My parents had to sell the company. Not to a competitor. They couldn't get a good enough offer. They sold the assets, the inventory, the client list, the whole thing, piece by piece. The business my grandfather built, that my father spent 40 years growing, gone in 6 months. The family home went next. The house I grew up in, where I learned to ride a bike, where I had my first kiss, where I thought I'd always be welcome, sold to cover legal fees and part of the tax debt. They're renting a condo now. My mother had to sell her car. My father, who hasn't worked for anyone else since he was 22, is looking for jobs at 63. The supplier deal that started all this? Dead. The other family wanted nothing to do with the scandal. My sister's ex got engaged to someone else 3 months ago. The whole arranged marriage thing that my parents were willing to destroy their daughter over? It was never going to work anyway. Am I happy about this? No. I'm not a monster. Watching my parents lose everything they worked for is painful, even knowing why it happened. But am I guilty? Also, no. They made choices. For years, they made choices. They chose to cheat on their taxes. They chose to pressure me into an unwanted marriage. They chose to threaten me with financial and emotional destruction. They chose to prioritize money over their own child. I didn't make those choices. I just stopped protecting them from the consequences. The whistleblower award came through last week. Because the IRS collected over $2 million based on my information, I'm entitled to a percentage. The exact amount is still being calculated, but my lawyer estimates somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000. Blood money, some might say. Money earned by betraying my own family. I prefer to think of it as a severance package from a job I never should have had, being the family scapegoat, the reliable one, the one who could always be counted on to sacrifice herself for the greater good. I got a new job, senior operations manager at a larger construction supply company. Better pay, better benefits, better everything. My boss knows my whole story. I was upfront during the interview, and he said, anyone with the integrity to report fraud, even against their own family, is someone I want on my team. My parents haven't spoken to me since their lawyer told them to stop contact. My sister sends occasional guilt trip texts that I don't respond to. Extended family has mostly written me off, except for a few cousins who reached out privately to say they understood. I'm okay with that. Better to be alone and honest than surrounded by people who only valued me as a tool. Last week, I ran into my sister's ex at a coffee shop. Pure coincidence. He saw me, smirked, and walked over. Heard about your parents. That's rough. Karma, though, right? I looked at him. The man my parents wanted me to marry. The man who cheated on my sister. The man who sat at that dinner table looking at me like I was his consolation prize. You cheated on my sister and you're talking to me about karma? His smirk faded. You know, if you'd just said yes, none of this would have happened. Your parents would still have their business. Your family would still be together, but you had to be difficult. I laughed. Actually laughed. You think this is my fault? My parents committed fraud for over a decade. I didn't make them do that. I didn't make them try to sell me to you like a used car. I didn't make them threaten their own daughter. They made those choices. You're just mad because their scheme falling apart ruined your business deal too. He didn't have a response. Stay away from me. Stay away from my sister. And stay away from anyone else's sister. You're not a prize. You're a warning. I walked out with my coffee. Didn't look back. The house my parents lost closes escrow next week. I drive past it sometimes. Not to gloat. It just happens to be on my way to work. Every time I see it, I think about the girl who grew up there. The one who tried so hard to be good enough. The one who thought if she just worked a little harder, achieved a little more, sacrificed a little more, she'd finally earn her parents' unconditional love. She doesn't exist anymore. I killed her the night I filed that IRS report. In her place is someone different. Someone who knows that love doesn't come from being useful. Someone who knows that loyalty is only valuable when it goes both ways. Someone who knows that being a good daughter to bad parents isn't a virtue. It's a cage. I'm out of the cage now. My parents built the bars with their own hands, and then they were surprised when I finally found the key. The whistleblower money will probably come through in another month or two. I'm putting most of it into savings, some into a new apartment, maybe a trip somewhere I've never been, somewhere no one knows me, where I'm not the girl who destroyed her family or the daughter who was almost sold for a business deal. Just me, whoever that turns out to be. Thanks for reading this mess, Reddit. Some of you will think I went too far. Some will think my parents got what they deserved. Some will say I'm as bad as them. Here's what I know. I'm sleeping better than I have in years. I don't jump when my phone rings. I don't dread family dinners or holidays or Sunday calls. I don't spend every day wondering what I can do to finally be good enough. For the first time in my life, I don't owe anyone anything.